Okay, welcome back, members, and we will just go straight into item number 10, proposals re-external review of decision to demolish the former Lochside Leisure Centre, and I think Mrs Williamson is going to speak to this one.
Yeah, thank you, convener. This report outlines the proposed remit, the timescale, the costs, the funding and the procurement options for an independent external review of evidence and decisions taken in regard to Lochside Leisure Centre. It asks members to approve the remit set out in Appendix 1 and determines the procurement options that they want applied. Paragraph 5, it lists the 3 options that are open to members, and it states that I would give you an update regarding Audit Scotland. So that's what I intend to do just now. As you know, Audit Scotland are currently our external auditors and have an understanding of the background to this case. I originally asked them to provide an overview of their confidence around the governance, the scrutiny, the evaluation and monitoring undertaken to date of Lochside Leisure Centre, and asked them to do that in relation to when they provide for us at Scrutiny and Audit, the Angus Council annual audit report, and they were willing to do that. However, at the meeting on the 19th of October, a fuller review was agreed by this council. As such, I went back to Audit Scotland and I asked if they could undertake the work and look at that in a bit more depth, and if they could do that under the current procurement rules, because I believe that this would incur a lesser cost to the council. They've advised that they do not have the capacity to carry out this work until well into the new year. As such, members would have to take that into consideration when they're selecting which option they want to go for. I guess this also has the potential for other people who may bid in for the work, either through the Excel framework or other independent auditors. It may have an impact really on the date that we've put into the report of reporting back to Council in March 2021 as a deadline. So I just wanted to alert members to the 2 things. One, if they were minded to ask Audit Scotland to do it, they have said to me that they can't do that until well into the new year, which knocks that time frame out. But equally, if they are hard pressed at the moment, we might find that with other providers. And therefore, I just would like it noted in the minute that although I would like it to be coming in March 2021, the fact that Audit Scotland, who obviously are an accountancy firm very experienced in public service law and accountancy, counterparts, other people, other firms who do this work may come back to say the same thing to me. I don't know at this stage, I just don't know. So that was the 2 points, and just to be alert that it may be the May Council before a report comes back. Clearly, if members make a decision today on options 1, 2 or 3, and that can be done quicker and come in on the March date, then that would be great. But just to be aware that it may be a bit longer. That's it for me, convener.
Thank you, Mrs Williamson. Any questions of Mrs Williamson? Councillor Hands, your blue hands up.
Thanks, convener. Mrs Williamson, could you confirm or otherwise, in terms of option 2 and 3, obviously you've explained that Audit Scotland are in a position now to do this review. In terms of 2 and 3, is it more likely Scotland Excel people, firms that are on the framework already, are more likely to have both the audit experience and also the public law experience? Because we, in terms of common good law, we're really looking to have fairly specialist knowledge. So would option 3 be more likely to provide people that have got that these combined skills rather than option 2?
I don't know the correct answer to that. I'll give you my best judgment on it. Scotland Excel deliberately procure for the public sector across all areas, as you know. So I would anticipate that they will have people on their books that could carry out this work. There will be other firms who probably can carry out the work who are not on their books. So it really would just depend on who was available and when. But I would anticipate that the framework that Scotland Excel would have a few people or a few firms on it, specifically because of what they currently have in terms of staff knowledge, experience and professionalism.
Yeah. And certainly there was a number of central belt law firms when I studied law, and we had tutors coming from public law was a core part of our course, and there were certainly people there really involved in public law. So it might not be somebody local, but it may be a possibility of at least getting these expertise Scotland-wide. And can I just, convener, put the suggestion forward so we can try and get through this? Given that Audit Scotland aren't able to do the work just now, that we go with option 3, since I think they are more likely to have the two combined skills that we're looking for. And if nobody comes forward, then we revert back to Audit Scotland when they've got the opportunity to do the review.
Okay, Councillor Hands, we'll bring that up just very shortly. I think all the members have heard that anyway, but there's quite a few wanting to speak or ask questions. Councillor Bell.
Thanks, convener. I'm minded to go the Excel route because as chair of the audit committee of the IGB, I'm fully aware of the pressures on Audit Scotland at the moment. But I think the foundation for that is a solid procurement tender. And I just wondered if Margot could maybe give us an assurance that there's capacity within the procurement team at the moment to take that on.
It's a good question. Across the council, across all our teams, we're pretty pressured at the moment. It will be a challenge for them, but they will prioritise this work because it's work that members have asked for. And I think the best assurance I could give you, which is probably why I was caveating it with, I might not be bringing back the report in March, it may be May. So the best assurance I could give you is I will keep you updated about when it's gone out to tender, if that's what was chosen, and also if the alternative of Scotland Excel was picked. Again, I would be able to give you some updates on that along the way.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Devine.
As convener, I think Councillor Hans has just kind of proposed option 3. I would like to second that, and let's move on if we can possibly.
Okay, yes, there's just a few questions, but I agree we need to move on. It's getting late now. Councillor Davey, question?
Yes, Chair. A question for Mrs. Williamson. The remit of the report, thank you for bringing it together, and I'm just checking that the remit of the report would allow whoever we go with to look at improvements that can be made. For example, whether councillors could have been given more time during the meeting, or whether the decision over the offers and the decision to demolish, for example, could have been separated, should they decide that these are relevant points.
Well, to respond to your question, I've got your motion in front of me, and I believe the report covers all aspects of the motion, which is what I was asked to bring. Now, it will be then up to the auditors for how they frame that in terms of the response.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fairweather.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Councillor Hans because she basically brought forward what I was going to say, and I thank Councillor Devine who's going to second that. I agree wholeheartedly. Let's get this right over and done with. I do not want to be going on for hours and hours over this. I think the recommendation the recommendation to approve the amount on Appendix 1 is fine, and determine the procurement option, yes, number 3. So, and I will be supporting that.
Okay, that's fine. I'm going to move that then. Option 3, is that agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry,
Okay,
can we speak on that, Chair?
No.
I think we've made the decision.
We've
made the
we've
decision.
agreed it.
It's agreed. Right, number 11, interim arrangements, information report update. We have the recommendations in front of us, and it's recommended that interim arrangements with regard to information reports cease and the previous practice of information reports being submitted to committees be re-established. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Agenda item number 12, Treasury Management Annual Report 2019-20. Recommendations are there. Any questions? No questions. Comments? Councillor McMillan Douglas.
Thank you. Can I be heard? Yes. Thank you very much.
Yep.
I wanted to welcome the report, which I think is in many ways self-explanatory. I will cut down what I was going to say. There are some important points there, which I think we just need to take note of, though. One is that Angus Council is committed to invest in a prudent way in sound investments. You might say we do that anyway. It's particularly important that we do that at a time of economic problems arising from the COVID measures, obviously, because it's more likely at this time that there will be institutions getting into financial difficulties. And we've seen that happen to local authority investments in the past. And so I think it's absolutely right that that point is noted in the paper. Secondly, there's always a temptation to increase borrowing at times of low interest rates. But we must remember that the capital always has to be repaid, even if the interest rate is low. Also, while we have some slippage in capital expenditure, which all of us would want to overcome and are working hard to overcome, that is not resulting from a lack of capital. It is due to work delays caused by the pandemic, well, by the pandemic mitigation measures. So I think that again is an important point to make, that we must remain prudent and careful at this time, because you can borrow, but you've always got to repay the capital. I'd like to ask the finance director if he basically agrees with those comments, or if there's anything else around that he would like to add.
Thank you, Mr. Lorimer.
Thank you, convener. Yeah, the points that Councillor McMillan Douglas makes around being careful about where we invest. We have a very detailed assessment, risk assessment process for where we place the council's temporary cash. The council's actually approved the strategy in relation to that. So that is all about risk management, and that's something that we pay attention to each and every day. In relation to borrowing, that is something we need to be mindful of what we can afford, and the repayment of the interest as well as the principal. We do assess each year as part of our budget setting what we can afford to spend on capital and how much we can afford to borrow. We do that for both our general fund and our housing capital plans as part of our long-term affordability strategy. So we've got a number of things in place that help us to manage the risk around investments and to make informed decisions around how much we can afford to spend and borrow in relation to capital projects. So I hope that's helpful as an update, convener. Thank you.
Yes, convener, that's very helpful to me, and therefore I recommend the paper.
Thank you, Councillor McMillan Douglas. Councillor Davey.
Sorry, Chair, it was a procedural question related to the last point. I'm just wondering if you could explain why I was not permitted to comment on it.
Already been agreed.
Because we had already been agreed. The comments and questions and comments are before the reports are agreed.
Understood, but you didn't get to comment, so I apologise for that. But no questions on this report.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Boyd?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Fotheringham. I wanted to make a few. Are we on to comments now, are we?
If there's no other questions, then we'll just go straight. There's no questions, so yes, the floor is yours.
My apologies. We're getting there. We're getting there. Yes, no. Back to comments that Councillor McMillan Douglas said about being prudent. I think this Conservative government have just raised £100 billion in debt earlier on today, so that just shows you how prudent the Conservatives are down in Westminster. It was a very interesting report and also a very interesting briefing on Monday. That it was a great revision of what we needed to recap, and it was great to see quite a few of members there, and it was also great to see some of us there for recaps. I did say I was disappointed to see that our economic spokesman, Councillor Davey, not attending yet again, but then he has quite a good track record of not attending council briefings. He could have learned so much from the 2-hour meeting that went on Monday. But back to the report. As I said on many occasions, debt is not a bad thing. Clearly, this is also what has been agreed today with the £1 billion stimulus to the UK economy. This was also mentioned at many times during the briefing, that you have to install confidence in the economy for us to move forward. It's just a pity that the Conservative government didn't do this in the last decade, when after we've had 10 years of misery of austerity that has been inflicted on our entire nation. Which economist was right? We don't know. But history proves that when you actually invest in your country, then you see boom times thereafter. This is clearly what happened after the Second World War. I strongly believe that this is the only way that we can get ourselves out of this pandemic and what we're witnessing in 2020. And I hope the government passes this on to councils, as we are at a breaking point financially. And I'd love for us to be able to see some of this £100 billion to make us look after our elderly, educate our children, and move forward when we can move out of this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boyd. Councillor Wan?
Yeah, through you, Chair, just for a point of clarification, I can't understand anything that Councillor Boyd just said there had to do with this paper. One, he mentioned about the Conservative government getting into debt. Well, I would like to ask him, would he prefer that we didn't extend the furlough to everybody in Scotland and Wales and Ireland and the UK, the rest of the UK? Also, his point on Councillor Braden Davey, I don't think this try to point score here, as he keeps going on about how Braden Davey always tries to point score. What relevance is that to the Treasury Management paper? Can I just ask for that and clarify, please?
Councillor Boyd, you want to come back?
It's relevant because we're talking about Treasury and also what happened. It was mentioned at the meeting. I can't remember if you were there. I think you were there, Derek. We were there. Councillor
Boyd, but I can't understand what the relevance of bringing in Councillor Davey or the UK Treasury about the debt with furlough, etc.
Because I'm entitled to opinion and make comment, and I was making comment that I don't think debt is a bad thing. That's what I said.
Well, that's good. If I didn't, the UK government.
All of it, Councillor Wan, okay. all of us are in this position. If we never borrowed to buy ourselves to get a mortgage, we would never have all the houses and we would never have the wealth that we have. It's fairly common sense. That's why I'm making the comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Hands down, please, if you're not going to speak again. Councillor McMillan Douglas.
Thank you very much, convener. I also was staggered by Councillor Boyd's rant, frankly. Don't like using that word, but I can't think of any other description. Whatever he thinks about Conservative governments is a matter for him. I don't really know why we've got to hear about that at council. But his attack on Councillor Davey was completely unacceptable in my view, completely unacceptable. And also, what is the relevance of what he was saying? Was he saying that he would like this council to go out and borrow loads of money, which would then have to be repaid? Because all I can say is it was Councillor Boyd who 3.5 years ago was saying there's no money in the kitty and you'll never manage to run this council. We've run it extremely well. We've balanced our books. We've continued to provide services for the people of Angus. And we've done that by being prudent. So perhaps Councillor Boyd might wish to be prudent in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor McMillan Douglas. Councillor Braze.
Yes, thank you, convener. It was a very informative briefing that we had the other day, and I learned an awful lot from it. And one thing which I didn't necessarily learn that day, but that is common sense, is that borrowings should be taken against the lifetime of the asset. Hugely important, and that's how you go about making progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Braze. Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Chair. It's the second time I've had to sit through Councillor Boyd essentially attacking me on this forum. And I let the first comment on Trump going for daring to believe that there should be a longer consultation. Now he's just attacked me for another reason, despite catching up on the briefing outside of the time I couldn't attend. But Councillor Boyd's attacked clergy by calling them bigots. He's had numerous complaints, including when he had to apologise for liking a comment calling for me to be hung on social media. He has aggressive behaviour towards other councillors, including when I sit in the council chamber, intimidating behaviour towards others, in my opinion. Yet we wonder why young people don't get involved in politics if this is the reaction that we have with people who should ultimately know any better. So I'm not content with Councillor Boyd's comment. Regards to the prudent management of the finances, I think it's a fairly sensible point that actually you're only able to borrow if you manage the finances sensibly during good times, and that's been shown in Angus Council, I think, with the Treasury Management Report, I think, which was fantastic. So yeah, to thank everyone that's put it together, and it was quite informative. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Councillor Miles.
Yes, Councillor Davey almost echoed what I was going to say. I abhor these personal attacks, and they should take any part of this council. But I would commend the paper and commend everyone behind the Treasury Management. We've showed by very prudent management we can be a very efficient council, and that gives us the ability to borrow in future times. And I'm sure almost every other council in Scotland would be envious of our position. So commend the paper and congratulations to all involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Councillor Moore.
Yeah, two quick comments. One, the elections next year, so let's leave the sniping out. And two, we've got to work together to get this council through the pandemic. So let's start just working with each other rather than sniping all the time, please.
Thank you. Councillor Cheap.
Oh, yes, I'm off mute. Yeah, thanks, Chair. No, I agree. We should, it's getting late. We should be moving on. But, it's all very well people complaining about other people on this thing, but there have been countless opportunities and countless evidence in the past of all people who are mourning now having counterattacks on Councillor Boyd in the past, and myself, and the Tories, and other people who don't regard themselves as Tories but are actually ganging up on us. So the bullying tactic works both ways, guys. So let's just eliminate it altogether.
Draw a line under it, please, and let's stick to the agenda items.
Totally agree.
Councillor Fairweather.
Yeah, just quickly. One, I agree with the report as well. And two, just agreeing what's just been said there. Perhaps we can stop the mudslinging for the rest of this meeting, please.
Couldn't agree more. Right, I'm going to move the report. Is it agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 13, Public Bodies Climate Change Duties, Angus Council Annual Report. Questions? Councillor McLaren.
Yes, I don't have a question. I just have a general comment on the report. Will I just go ahead with that?
Let's just have a look and see. There's something wrong with my screen now. Right, there's nobody else wanting to ask a question, Councillor McLaren. So yes, let's just go straight to comments. On you go.
Right. The Council has been voluntarily reporting on its climate change action on a yearly basis since 2009. In 2015, the annual reporting became a statutory requirement. The public body's duty report comes before us every year. The report sets out what actions have been taken in relation to climate change over the last year and our performance in a number of crucial areas. This report is even more important given the climate emergency that was declared by the Council last year. The report is very positive. There are clear improvements being made in our performance, and our climate change activity will likely improve with the work that's currently been undertaken on the Sustainable Energy and Carbon Action Plan. For the first time this year, and in response to a number of comments on the report last year, officers have prepared an accessible version which presents some of the achievements in newsletter format rather than the complicated Excel spreadsheet that we have to submit to the government. This will be really helpful in getting across the message that there is a significant amount of activity going on to address climate change, and the mitigation and adaptation work is woven into much of what we do as a council. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the officers that were involved in bringing this report forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McLaren. Yes, there's been a lot of work done by a lot of officers and yourself and elected members, and it's a very good and informative report. Thank you. Councillor Bell.
Thank you very much, Convener. I found it a very helpful briefing earlier today, and I thank officers and Councillor McLaren for pulling that together, and all the members of the group. I particularly wanted to highlight something that came out of that discussion, and that is around how we communicate and engage with our communities. And there's some really good work going on around that already, that came out of the community planning partnership with a sustainable communities event, which was in Kirriemuir. And Sustainable Kirriemuir has been set up on the back of that, and they're doing some incredible work with the support of officers and additional money that's allowed them to actually employ staff to help food growing in schools, and looking at a Kirriemuir climate action plan, which is fantastic. So that will fit into the CCAP, and I'm just really keen to flag that up to other communities to get engaged in this, because it won't happen just with Angus Council on its own. It needs to be all of us engaged in this at whatever place we are on our sustainable journey. And I commend this report and urge people to read it and to get involved.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bell. Any other comments? Councillor Brace.
Yes, thank you, Convener. Yes, a very good report and an excellent briefing session that we had to that report. And thanks to Councillor McLaren for pulling it together again. Yes, just to note that last week at our Development Standards Committee meeting, we gave permission for houses in Montrose that will be heated with gas. And I'm assured that those will be the last houses that we build that will be heated with gas, and that's to be welcomed. And I'm told that it's quite feasible that those houses can be converted at some time in the future to run on air source heat pumps, or indeed possibly on hydrogen. So it's good that we're moving away from fossil fuels in that sector. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Brace. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Convener. Yes, I found the report very helpful. I'm sorry I wasn't able to make the meeting this morning. I was setting up my 5th Surface Pro. One thing that I would encourage all members to do, within the church movement, the Church of Scotland, there is Eco Congregation Scotland, which looks at how the churches can become more eco-friendly. And I would strongly recommend that. My church has just been recommended for the Silver Award, which is not a bad achievement for the size of church we are, but all churches can get involved. It's Eco Congregation Scotland, and that can have an impact on your area as well.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Yes, I know that the new church that was built in Moneyfeton just opened last year, which I'm a member of, and the Provost and I attended the opening of it. It's very eco-friendly, up to date, but brand new solar panels. You name it, it's got air source heat pumps and things like that. So that's fine. So no more comments. You've got the report in front of you. I'm going to move it. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item 14 is the Angus Alive update. And there's appendixes 1 and 2 in this report. I'll just bring it up here. Any questions? Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Chair. I think Kirsty. Yeah. It was a question in relation to what the differences are between Tier 2 and Tier 3, and how do we think that would impact the work of Angus Alive? For example, should Angus be moved up a tier? And also, obviously, it's only just been announced. Do we expect the extension of the furlough scheme to have a significantly positive impact on the ability to run Angus Alive services?
Are you happy for me to speak to that, Chair?
Absolutely, Kirsty.
Yep, thank you.
By the way.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the question, Councillor Davey. So first of all, with regards to the different tier levels, there are some fairly significant differences between levels 2 and 3 for our services. Some of the most challenging difficulties will be with regards to sport and leisure. You may already be aware that colleagues who were operating within the central belt prior to the tier model being introduced, but in what was equivalent to tier level 3 or as closely equivalent to that as possible, were unable to run group exercise classes in an indoor environment. And that's one of the most significant areas of operation that we have within the sports centres. And it's something that I'm delighted to say has been really popular in terms of the return to exercise of the communities of Angus over the past 6 weeks or so, since we reopened our sports centres on the 14th of, or from the 14th of September. So that would have a fairly significant impact both on our customers and in terms of what we would be able to offer. However, at the moment, it looks like individual exercise would still be permitted. So that would include things like, for example, use of the fitness suite for an individual accessing that on their own. I think we're still all getting to grips with exactly what the changes mean. And there's been new guidelines that have been issued by Sports Scotland and also the national governing bodies for the different sports. And we'll need to obviously make sure that we consult with that closely. But for those of you who have colleagues that, or family members or friends that live in different tier areas, for example, in the neighbouring area of Dundee, you'll potentially already be aware that the services in those types of localities have already been impacted from a sport and leisure provision perspective. In terms of libraries, those are considered to be public buildings and therefore would still be able to be open, we understand, but with only essential face-to-face services and online for all other activities. Museums are currently classified as visitor attractions, so they would only be able to open outdoors, and that would therefore be limited for visitor attractions as well. As you noted in your question, the changes for furlough have only just been announced earlier this afternoon. That position keeps on changing. It does make it very difficult for employers, not just ourselves, but all other organisations in Angus who will be looking to access that support, and it is a very welcome support, but it does make it challenging for us to keep our employees informed and to make sure that the team are up to speed with exactly what's happening and what the implications are for them personally, for the charity as an organisation, and also for the services, obviously, that we provide to our communities.
Okay, thank you, Kirsty. Councillor Speed.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, Kirsty, I just wondered if you could let me know what consultation has been done with the Arbroath public before the decision of integration of the access face-to-face service within the library, and what further consultation will be done just to ensure that we get public feedback with regards to that merger, and also just a kind of feedback with regards to correspondence I've had from constituents who have received a face-to-face service within the library, which I think, I certainly welcome that service is up and running, but there has been some concerns around people that are maybe discussing very sensitive matters, albeit that we have to have social distancing measures in place, but the kind of the access office that was at kind of Kirk Square was able to provide separate meeting spaces for people that do have to disclose quite personal, confidential information. So can you just explain about how that would look within, or how that does look and could look?
Yeah. So we would highlight, as mentioned in the report, that the integration at the moment is on a trial basis, and it's something that has been put in place during the circumstances that we're in, and any decisions about the future would obviously need to be taken in discussion with communities and other users of the service. With regards to the arrangements that have been put in place at the moment, we've made changes physically to the layout of the access office. We've the library, so that the access service can be provided from the integrated facility. We have cordoned off an area to make sure, or to try to make sure that it's as private as possible. If there's concerns that there's something further that still needs to be done there, then I can still, can speak to the team about that, obviously. But I would say that the feedback that we've had from customers, because I did check with the team prior to coming to join you on the meeting this afternoon, has been positive. And we have made sure that there's been communication on social media, but also attached to the access office physically itself to point people in the direction of the library to ensure that they know that that's where they can get face-to-face services at the current time.
Okay, and can I just come back, Chair, with just a follow-up question?
Yes, of course.
With regards to, is there actual, within the kind of physical space within the library, is there separate meeting spaces that could be, closed off rooms that could be made available for a private consultation or interview?
So from my knowledge of the building, there is a space where that would potentially be possible, but that is on the first floor. So that wouldn't obviously be accessible potentially to everybody, because there's not necessarily the ability to get up the stairs. But I can take that one away and we can look at that with the team. I think that they tried to put the cordon, the screened off area into an area of the building where there would be very few people. There's obviously limited capacity within the libraries anyway, and we are encouraging people to come in for limited browsing. And that means that they should only be accessing certain areas of the library to select a book or different, magazine or something of their choice, and then leave the library. And then there's no furniture in place any longer for sitting, because we're not encouraging people to spend any longer than is necessary in the library to protect both the safety of customers and also our colleagues.
Okay, thank you. Chair, I do have a separate question unrelated to the access library integration, but do you want me to wait and let others speak?
Is it related to the report, Councillor Speed?
It's related to the report, and it was regards to the Blazing Saddles funding money, Kirsty.
Okay, carry on.
Is that okay, Kirsty? You could just explain is how that will continue and where the locations will be.
So I think the funding covered an initial period of time where we were piloting the scheme in Minnicky Country Park, and it has proven to be extremely popular with a wide range of participants. And we've had really excellent feedback and also coverage on social media from participants who have come to enjoy that new opportunity at the country park. We've been working with the funder and also looking for additional funding from elsewhere. And there are some new funds related to the cycling championships that are coming to Scotland in the near future, which we're looking to access to potentially be able to extend that. We are also considering whether there's opportunities to bring it to different areas of Angus, but there's no finalised plans with regard to that at the moment. But we can certainly share that in a further meeting.
Yeah, I know that people were particularly missing the kind of the running of the adapted bikes down at the Arbroath West Links. And I think people do hope to see that come back to that location. I'm sure it's good to, like you say, be able to perhaps travel around and have pop-ups. But I know that access and travel and transport can be an issue for some people who are maybe not able to travel to a more rural location as well. So hopefully that's something that can be considered going forward too.
Yeah, I can feed that back to the team that's looking after that project.
Thank you.
That was all right for you, Councillor Speed. 3 questions and a comment, so you did well. Councillor Whiteside.
Thanks, convener. It was a bit of an observation, really. It seems to me that there's nothing too controversial on the green paper, the appendix. It would have been quite good if we could have just dealt with everything all at once without going out and going into another meeting. Was there any particular reason why that isn't possible?
Mrs. Smith, please, maybe could you answer that, Vivian?
Yes, thanks, Chair and Councillor Whiteside. There was a fair amount of discussion actually about whether or not we should put this information on green paper, but we did actually have quite a long conversation with Kirsty and thinking about the information that was in that appendix being really relating to the financial and business affairs of Angus Alive. And therefore we opted to put that part of the report, which is financial information, onto green paper on that basis. Really, it contains some commercial information. It does include a breakdown of income and expenditure. It does talk about percentages of expenditure relating to staff costs against each element of the business, and percentages of total income generated by the business relating to each of the business areas. And the feeling was that that was just too commercially sensitive to be sharing that at this time, particularly when there has been a depressed number of people falling away from particularly sports areas, reducing memberships, which we've tried to highlight as well. But that, that whole area is likely to, is already competitive and is likely to be more competitive. And that was why we went with putting that information onto Appendix 3. We will be bringing a further report in December, and again, that will contain performance and financial information. And so we do need to kind of set a precedence, I guess, around taking that information either in public or in private. I would recommend taking it in private.
Okay, Councillor Whiteside.
Yeah, it was just really in the interest of transparency for the public, but I accept what Vivian says.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Vivian. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Convener. Kirsty, earlier you referred to the fact that we're in Tier 2 and Dundee is in Tier 3. Have you put any measures in place, considering that people from Dundee, if they can't do their chosen sport in Dundee because it's locked down more, will come to use Angus Alive facilities?
So I would expect that all of us as responsible citizens are not doing that, and it wouldn't be appropriate for us to interrogate people at the reception desk about where they've come from. If they were obviously looking to sign up for a membership, then we have to get an address for that, but it's not something that at the moment that we would be asking people where they have travelled from to participate, because it's not I don't think it's legally enforceable yet, and it's a guideline that people are being asked to follow. Obviously, we would encourage people not to travel to our facilities, to use them, and to ensure that they're only making use of the facilities that are in their particular locale and their particular tier.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hans.
Yeah, would that not be, in terms of where people are coming from, would that not be obvious who your track and trace process?
So I think that in the sports centres, it's normally we track that information through the cards being swiped, so that we have the record of people coming in and out, so that we don't currently have people checking the information about where that card is registered to. I can double check with the team about the specifics of how that works. It's not something that I am in a position to be able to answer right at this second, because I'm not managing that myself, I'm afraid, but I can definitely find that out and we can let people know.
Just also wondering how much of a problem that is as well, because obviously they'd have more information about that. But I mean, it would be a very difficult position for your staff to be in as well, in terms of challenging people.
Yeah, an almost impossible situation, I think, even with regards to face coverings. Obviously, people are encouraged to wear face coverings, but there are legitimate reasons why some customers may not be able to wear face coverings, and it is a very difficult position that it does put staff in around that kind of area as well.
But there's also a card scheme now available, so maybe having that in public view to alert people to the fact that they can apply for the exemption card would maybe be helpful to help your staff as well.
Yeah, I think we do have that, but I can double check that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bell?
Thanks, convener. I just wanted to go back to Kirsty on that track and trace point. If there are individuals coming to use any of our facilities on a one-off basis, not as part of the membership scheme, their contact details should surely be captured by our staff in those centres. So could we make sure that that is happening, please? Because that is a significant public health issue.
Yeah, so that is definitely happening, and I know how it's happening in libraries and museums. I just don't have the exact information for you about how it's happening in sports centres here, because that's not something that I have been as cited on, but I can definitely find that out and we can confirm that to all councillors.
Okay, thank you. That was all the questions. Very briefly then, are there any comments? Councillor Whiteside? No, okay, that's all right. Councillor Speed?
Yeah, it was just kind of picking up from what was being said there around kind of our COVID management and social distancing. And Kirsty, you'd said there hadn't been any kind of engagement with the public around the integration of the access office to the library. And I'm just thinking in terms of the access office, obviously the Kirk Square obviously does provide much more space and separate meeting rooms that perhaps would lend better to our social distancing challenges and health and safety. So I just wondered if you could just maybe explain a bit more as to then how that merger decision was taken, or that proposal for that.
So it's based on, I guess, a number of different reasons. One is that we're trying to make sure that we're using the most efficient use of the resources that we have available. The second one is to make sure that we're able to have one space where people know that that's where they're coming. We do have it in a separate area of the library, which is why I want to speak to the team about the point you raised previously, Councillor Speed, with regards to the privacy, because I believe that it is in an area which is not an area that people will be going to unless they're going for an access related inquiry, because of all the books being in a different area of the library. But that's what I want to double check with the team for you. And in terms of the integration, that's the model that we have operating in all of the other libraries in Angus, and it's been working really effectively. It's encouraged people who use access to use the library, and there's also been the opportunity for people who use the library who maybe didn't know about access as much. So there's a definite crossover there. So from the understanding and the learnings that we've had from elsewhere, that was definitely something that we were looking to support. There's also, in terms of the channel shift that has happened over the past number of years, but also most recently with the channel shift as a result of the situation under COVID-19 since lockdown, making sure that, yes, we do need to have a face-to-face service available, and that's why we've prioritised that. And based on the data, that is why the library in Arbroath is open the most number of days because of the volume of access traffic that goes through that location. So we've modified the number of days that sites are open on the basis of that data. We're continually monitoring that data, and we'll be looking at whether any changes up or down in any of the locations are required as a result of how many people are coming for access inquiries. But we believe that we would be able to handle the number of inquiries safely in that space.
And just to come back, Chair, I guess that would be my kind of thought around the population of Arbroath. And as we've already discussed earlier in today's council meeting, that kind of increase in demand and challenge and hardship that people are experiencing, I think it's really crucial that we are able to provide that face-to-face, but also in an environment that does lend for not just social distancing, but people's kind of ability to be able to have those kind of meetings and discussions and be able to speak sensitively and privately. So yeah, I'm pleased that it will be reviewed and monitored and that there will be further consultation with the public. Thanks, Kirsty.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Speed. Any other comments? No, okay, I'm going to move the report then. We've got 6 recommendations in it. Are they agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, agenda item number 15 is the possible exclusion of public and press. Do we agree to exclude the public and press?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you.